in the first few years of my second marriage, Hank and I discovered, much to our annoyance and embarrassment, we disagreed on what was right or romantic or fair. But I was very confident in this second marriage. I had invested thousands of dollars in self-actualization programs and workshops, otherwise known as lots of therapy. And I had fallen in love with the idea of relationship communication, had gone on for professional training so that I could coach other families and partners and couples about clear communication and active listening. So I thought this would be okay. And yet, even with this training, I sometimes smashed up against the wall of self-centeredness, that I want to be right feeling. And I was forced to be humble, to get back into the romance of our marriage. Hank and I adopted two slogans to help us with our communication and our relationship. And one of them was, we are the architects of our relationship. We are not copying the blueprint of someone else. And also, so we wouldn't bring old baggage, perhaps from our family of origin, that didn't work. We would say, we'll take what we like, we'll leave the rest. It worked, for the most part. I'll give you an example. But first, a little background, sometimes known as self-righteous justification. My favorite meal of all time is breakfast. I think this is a reaction to my childhood breakfasts, which were centered totally around nutrition. My sisters and I were served one soft-boiled egg. How could anyone like a soft-boiled egg? Runny, mushy. Sometimes the yolk is almost like translucent, and as a little kid, I mean, there's a little baby chick still in here. I don't know. This was accompanied by freshly squeezed orange juice, an alphabet of vitamins A, B, and C, and one slice of whole wheat toast that had been just kissed with a little bit of margarine, no butter, and certainly no jam. Now, to eat dry toast is really hard. But if you get down to the end of the loaf and you get that last piece and you have to eat that toast, that is the dreaded heel. Now I know some of you may like the heel, but it's not as soft, it's crusty, it's not really comfort food. I went around and I asked my friends, do you like the heel or don't you like the heel? Most people don't like the heel. I'm sorry for those of you who do, you're in the minority. Then I did some research. I went and Googled cultural opinions about the heel. The heel is known to be, quote, universally despised. Not a good label to have. My sisters and I avoided the heel at all costs. Oh, it dropped off my plate. I would distract my sister so I could switch and put the heel on her plate. Break it up in little pieces, spread it around the plate so it looked like you had eaten most of it, or use it to sop up the mushy yolk. Anything to avoid the heel. When I went to college, my horizons for eating widened. Now, college cafeteria food is not cuisine, but there's a lot of it. And I discovered I loved bread with butter, lots of it, and jam, but no heels. The first semester, I think of my sophomore year, I had an 8 a.m. class in Spanish, and this is where my love affair with breakfast began. If you have a morning class, very early in the morning, you know, you keep your pajamas on, you put a sweatshirt or a raincoat or a trench coat over it. This was on the East Coast, so it was a little chilly. You go to the cafeteria, you have a huge, wonderful breakfast, scrambled eggs, bacon, coffee, toast, no heels. You go to class, you get a little sleepy by the time class is over after all that food, so you go back to the dorm, take off your sweatshirt, and you go back to bed. Then, I think the next semester, I started having breakfast off campus. Now, if you have had breakfast on the East Coast, New York, New Jersey, or Connecticut, you gotta go to a diner. They're open 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. They serve breakfast the entire day. Any kind of breakfast you want. And the bread, white bread, wheat, rye, pumpernickel, challah, sourdough, bagels, muffins, club sandwiches, French toast, and yet I would always say, no heel splits. Now fast forward to the first year of our marriage. Hank and I didn't have a lot of money. He had 2 teenage girls, so we were raising the kids, trying to save for a house. We didn't go out to eat a lot. When he asked me, what do you want for your birthday? I said, I want breakfast in bed. Hank was inspired. Breakfast came in on a white wicker tray with the New York Times folded in that little pocket on the side. I had 2 eggs over easy, the freshly squeezed orange juice with the vitamins, I kept that from my childhood, coffee with cream, which I had become addicted to, 2 slices of toast slathered with butter, cut on the diagonal, because you know just to have it cut in half is pretty boring. This was a breakfast from a loving husband. The taste buds on my tongue were like, took a bite of egg, a sip of juice, and then I reached for the toast. I think I physically recoiled. It was the heel. The heel! What, is he trying to be funny? Sweetie is standing in the doorway, smiling at me, waiting expectantly. I spoke from love. It's wonderful. Thank you. Such was the success of this birthday breakfast that it made an encore 2 months later on Mother's Day. In came the wicker tray with the New York Times, this time the good plates, not China, but they were good for us, a linen napkin, scrambled eggs, lots of bacon, juice, coffee, and toast, with lots of butter and 2 choices of jam. On the side of the tray was a little bud vase, and it had a rose in it and the word love etched inside. But you know, I couldn't help it. I looked at the bread first. I poked it with my finger. It was the heel. It was the heel. I felt my face get hot. You know when something goes wrong? Hank looked at me and goes, Beth, what's wrong? Now, in one of our recent communication clarifications conversations, we had agreed the answer was never to be nothing to the question, what's wrong, when something in fact was wrong. The heel. What'd you give me the heel for? What kind of a present is that? Can you hear my voice? I was whining. My vocal cords were tight. Hank looked at me and his mouth went into that little O of astonishment. He had nothing to say. It's been mean. He turned and left the room. So much for talking it out. You know, in that minute, all the actualized adult in me left, and I just regressed to this little child. He came back and I was still whining. My voice hurt, but I was still whining. Why'd you give me the heel? He had the loaf of bread in his hand, and there were other pieces there, and the heel, and not the heel. Why didn't you give me the heel? He sat down on the side of the bed, and he said, listen, I wanted to make something really special for you. And when I was growing up, whoever my mother gave the heel to was the special one. And we said, you're going to have good luck all day. Yeah, you can imagine how I felt then. And then looks at me and goes, so honey, you're the special one. The heel of his childhood or the heel of mine? We took the one from his. And we now have a third slogan whenever we disagree on what's right or what's fair. It's like, this could be a heel thing.